Conference, we now come to the point in the week where we remember those who we've lost over the last 12 months. So if you are able to do so, could you please stand to observe a minute's silence? And that minute's silence will commence now. Thank you, Conference. You can be seated. Conference National Executive Committee, observers, honorary life members, delegates and invited guests. Welcome to this, the 85th Annual Conference of the POA. Just a quick alteration to your programmes. Claudia Mello from Columbia and Alice Foyle from the NHS are unable to attend, so they won't be speaking. But we do have other confirmed guest speakers. They include Lord Timpson, the Prisons Minister. He'll be speaking this morning. Michelle Jarman-Howe, the Acting Director General Operations for HMPPS. We have Beverly Wall, who's the Director General for the Northern Ireland Prison Service. Jonathan Hall, KC, who did the review into separation centres. We have Fran Heathcote, the General Secretary of the PCS. And we have fraternal greetings from our Southern Ireland delegation and Stuart McLaughlin, Honorary Life Member. Our fringe meetings include the Employment Rights Act, informing you as POA members what that means for you. We have a fringe about the well-being of prison officers with Dr. Joanne Forsyth. Got close links with Jo, and we've worked with her over the years. She's produced a paper which got her a doctorate onto the well-being of prison officers. She's done workshops how to relieve stress for prison officers. So it'll be a really interesting fringe, that, because that paper concluded what we've been saying for years, that there's very little support for staff on the front line when they deal with trauma. So if you can spare some time for that one, that'd be a really interesting one for you. And we've got a fringe on combating the rise of the far right. Our awards this year include the Steve Oxby Rep of the Year Award. We have our Cronin Clasp winners, and we have a Mabel Hempton Award for bravery. At the back of the room, you may notice some familiar faces from HMPPS. They include the Head of Employee Relations, Francis Stewart, and the Director of the Long-Term High Security Estate, Ed Cornell. Please go and say hello to them. That's your chance to badger them with the issues that you face in your workplaces. The nominated charity this year is Charlie's Promise, which hopes to eradicate knife crime and educate the youths. And that was formed after the tragic murder of Charlie Crosser in July 2023. And I'm so pleased that we can contribute to such a worthy cause. I'd like to start my address by thanking the NEC, the full-time officials, the officers, all the support staff, my amazing secretary, Nicola Hubert, for all their dedicated and committed work over the last 12 months. Thank you for the way you support me, and thank you for the way you support our hard-working branch officials and our members. It's down to them that things like this run so smoothly and are so well organised. Thank you also to the Retired Members Committee, whose social events go from strength to strength, ensuring that our retired colleagues are not forgotten about and are very much part of the POA family. Most of all, Conference, I want to thank each and every one of you, our hard-working branch officials, I recognise and I understand the pressures you are all under. I know the sacrifices you make to represent your members, and you do it so, so well. But the most sincerest thanks I have are to you and the entire POA membership for re-electing me for another term of office. I'm so proud to be your national chair and lead you. I can't thank you enough. I absolutely love this role. And I can assure you, I will not let you down. And the fire in my belly is burning brighter and hotter than it ever has. You are my motivation and my inspiration. So thank you so much. And of course, POA members should be proud of their trade union leaders, because our very own General Secretary, Steve Gillen, is now the president of the TUC. What an accolade for Steve, and what an accolade for this union. The little old POA are now leading the entire trade union movement. And I know Steve has worked tirelessly as part of the TUC General Council to attain that honour, and I know we will continue to work tirelessly to improve the lives of all the working class. Well, it's all change at the very top. We welcome onto the NEC Dave Ferry and Roger Moran. They fitted in really well. We've got Terry McCarthy and Sarah Rigby, who continue to do commendable work on your behalf. They're now full-time officials. And at the top of HMPPS, we said goodbye to Amy Rees and Phil Coppell. One moved on, one retired. I suspect against their will. Well, actually, I know it was against their will. And all I've got to say about that is if you can stitch people up in those positions, what hope is there for the rest of us? And now we have a new CEO, James McEwen, who's admitted himself that he has zero operational experience of prisons whatsoever. He's a very nice man, Conference. Don't have any issues with him. Happy to do business with him. But let me tell you something about James McEwen. He will do what those below him want him to do, and those above him tell him to do. It's as simple as that. And look what he walked into. Jails that were so full to capacity that the government had to introduce a raft of early release schemes. He even had to change legislation to free up space in our prisons so we could satisfy the courts. And in September, convicted criminals will serve just 1/3 of their sentence in custody, with the other 2/3 served in our communities, supervised by a probation service that it's on its knees, that can't retain staff, is overworked and under-resourced. My biggest fear is that we're on the verge of a massive crime wave. Imagine being a victim of crime, and the perpetrator gets sentenced to 9 years, and then you discover they'll serve just 3 years in prison. That's not justice. Conference. It was a necessary evil. We had to free up space. And this is down to successive governments failing us, failing to invest. They closed over 20 public sector prisons with the loss of over 10,500 cell spaces. They let experienced staff leave. We've lost over 116,000 years of experience from the Landons. We will never recover from that. And of course, with all this going on, the pressure was then on staff who had to recalculate sentences, with the inevitable releases in error. And Chelmsford hit the headlines because of a release in error. Conference, I'm in my 35th year as a prison officer. 34 years ago, we were releasing people in error. You know why? Because we're still using the same methods today as we were using decades ago. the lowest paid member of staff in the office block, who probably hasn't been trained, using paper, pen, and a calculator. That's if they can find a calculator that actually works. To sentence calculate, to tell us when someone's getting released. Is it any wonder there's going to be mistakes? And despite all the panic measures that were brought in, despite all the checks and the balances, releases in error continue to this day. Over the last week, there have been 7 releases in error. And the problem I've got with all this is, despite all these extra checks being brought in, I don't know of a single person who's been suspended from duty or disciplined over a release in error. Not a single member of court staff who release people from court when they shouldn't, don't send us the correct paperwork, or don't send us the warrant to hold someone. Not a member of the admin staff who miscalculate a sentence because they're overworked and probably haven't received any training. And certainly no governor grades who sign the paperwork off as correct and give us permission to release prisoners. Not a single one of them being suspended or disciplined over that, despite the releases in error continuing. But I know who does get suspended. I know who does get disciplined. Us, you, your members, the people on the front line bearing the brunt of years of underinvestment. Well, let's put it right. The real culprits in this are successive governments. Governments who failed to invest, governments who failed to modernise, governments who failed to digitalise, and governments who failed to train us properly and give us the resources we need. They're the real culprits in releases in error, not staff on the front line bearing the brunt of savage cuts. They're the real culprits. Let's get that right. Get it right now. The sentencing review now reduces someone's sentence, but it also gives people a standard 56-day recall. Well, you talk to any member of staff who works in reception, and they'll all tell you the same thing. As soon as you're releasing someone early, they're coming back, days or weeks later. This is not a solution to the problem we face. And as part of that sentence review now, apparently, we're going to rebrand the OMIC model, totally overhaul it. And as you recall, part of the old OMIC model was key work. Well, it's not going to be part of the new OMIC model for some strange reason. Let me tell you something about key work. Because when it comes to key work, promises made are certainly not promises kept. Key work's never been given an opportunity to succeed, because what's the first thing your governors drop in order to give prisoners the opportunity to play pointless games of ping pong and pool? They drop key work. Well, I'll tell you where key work does succeed. It succeeded at HMP Lincoln because they profile it. It very rarely gets dropped, and it's one of the safest jails in the country. And let's bust the myth about the key work model. There is only one key work model that is in play and remains in play today, and it's the nationally agreed key work model that was first introduced years ago. We haven't had any consultation or discussions about a new watered-down key work model where you only interview prisoners with complex needs once every 2 weeks or once every 4. The model that's in play today and remains in play till we get consulted on something different is a caseload of 6, 45 minutes per week per prisoner, so don't accept anything less from your senior leaders. Conference violence continues to rise. There are no green shoots, as the bosses like to tell us. There are no positives. Every single day, 28 assaults on staff. 3 of those assaults on staff are so serious that our colleagues end up in hospital. There's been a 9% increase on assaults on staff in a female estate, and they've got no protection at all. Well, let me assure you at this conference, we have asked for, and we continue to ask for, PAVA to be issued to staff working in the female estate and the open estate, because we recognise that is the least level of protection you need and you deserve. We will keep pushing that. When it comes to the female estate, they can't even decide if they want to remove razors. One of the major causes of self-harm in the female estate is females using razors to cut themselves. Would it not be an easy win to just remove razors so they can't self-harm? We've been asking for years. But they dither and they delay and they make excuses. These are the attitudes we're up against from people earning big bucks who cannot make the sensible decisions to protect you and protect the people in our care. We all know what the drivers are. This firm's got more drivers than Uber, and they still can't get nothing right. Look at the violence you faced. Last May, we had a member of staff stabbed at Long Lartin, airlifted to hospital, emergency operation. We've had a murder at Wakefield. Well, we've had several murders at Wakefield. A murder at Frankland, a murder at Whitemore. We've had more murders in the prison estate over the last 12 months than you see in an episode of The Sopranos. And on the back of all this, we finally put enough pressure on the government, both in the media and face-to-face with ministers, to force them to do the right thing by you and roll out stab-proof vests. Yes, initially, in the long-term high-security estate, in those volatile areas, separation centres, close supervision centres and segregation units, with plans to equip the entire long-term high-security estate with stab-proof vests, and we welcome that. But we want to go further. As a minimum, we want stab-proof vests to be available to staff who work in a closed adult male estate. And as a minimum, we want every member of staff who works in a segregation unit to be equipped with a stab-proof vest, no matter what security category prison you work in, because we recognise and we realise that's the least level of protection you now need and you deserve. We managed to secure the rollout of tasers in the high-security estate. Specially trained staff will be on permanent standby when they're on shift and will have the capability to deploy tasers when the need arises during serious incidents. We want to go further with that. We want that capability available in at least the adult closed male estate, because we realise the threat that you face on a daily basis. We've managed to succeed and stave off a legal challenge to remove PAVA from the YCS estate from people who are neither brave enough nor talented enough to don the King's uniform and do the job that you do and face the threat and the violence you face shift. So give us the physical security. I've seen drones that are the equivalent of a one-person helicopter. Imagine one of them getting remotely landed on a prison sports field to aid the escape of a high-profile prisoner. We've got drones that can carry a payload of over 100 kilograms. And still, this employer dithers and delays and makes excuses. We haven't got time to wait around. They need to get the finger out. They need to get their act together. This is now a national security threat. HMPPS, you're putting the lives of your staff and the risk to the public. It's a massive national security threat. You need to get a grip of this. You need to put it right. Give us the physical security we need to block the drones, and give us it now, not next week, not next month, not next year. Give us it now. The people here are under threat. Get it sorted. And with all this going on, what do the government and the pay review body reward you with? An insulting 3.5% pay rise. Insulting. Now look, we're all working class people. We don't ask for much. What do we ask for as working class people? We want to be able to live, not just survive. We want to live somewhere decent where we can afford to pay our rent or our mortgage. We can afford to pay our bills. Maybe we want the odd luxury. Take our family out to a restaurant for a nice meal, drive a decent car, go on holiday once a year. Maybe we want to go to the match and have a few pints. It's not much to ask for as a working class person. But we can't even do that because your wages don't even match the most basic of things, the rate of inflation. Your pay should be about lifting you from the bottom to the top. It's about improving your standards of living. But you know better than me that when the standard of living goes down, it's because the cost of living has gone up. And your wages just don't match it. Conference over the last 14 years, your pay is at least 12.6% behind the rate of inflation. That's a lot of money to lose. I'd rather have 12.6% extra in your pocket than in the government's. And listen to what the pay review body said. Listen to this. They said, in the financial year 2024-25, the Band 3 maximum was below median earnings in all regions, as has been the case for several years. Well, if you know it's been the case for several years, and you're a supposed independent pay review body, put it right. Lift our pay above the median earnings in all regions. This is a pay review body that disgracefully increased your rate of payment plus by £1. It hasn't risen for 10 years, so they've given you an extra 10 pence per hour over the last 10 years. £1. Across the entire public sector, the median pay award was 4%. We didn't even match that. And they go on to say, the Band 3 maximum remains below the maximum for a firefighter and a police constable. Is it any wonder we're losing so many staff to those occupations? The Office of National Statistics have concluded that in the year 2025, the rate of inflation will average out at 3.6%. We got 3.5. But isn't it funny, Conference, what can be achieved if you have your most basic industrial rights? You have the right to take industrial action up to including strike action. The probation unions have just accepted a 6% pay rise. 6%! Because they are not afraid to ballot their members for industrial action. Look what the bin workers in Birmingham have achieved after years of taking industrial action to protect their terms and conditions. And the junior doctors, just like us, they want pay restoration. And because of their industrial action over the last 18 months, they've achieved a 28% pay increase, and they're fighting for more, quite rightly. They continued that industrial action today to restore their pay to the levels that they should have. And I say to the junior doctors, solidarity to you, keep fighting. But isn't it funny, Conference? Governments can always find money for wars, but can never find money for a decent public sector pay award. Well, maybe it's time the POA waged a war. Maybe it's time we started a war. A war against poverty wages, a war against unrealistic overtime rates, a war against employers who exploit workers and get them to do tasks free of charge, a war against governors who continue to target our members, a war against governments who force the working class to pay for their mistakes while the rich get richer, a war against billionaire tax dodgers, a war against the review body that refuses to be independent and continues to appease this government. But the war we need to start and the war we need to win is against this government, who refuse to give us our most basic of human rights, our workplace rights and our industrial rights. The POA needs to start a war against this government to restore our right to strike. That's the war we need to start right now. But of course, conference, money does not compensate you for the imminent risk you now face, both inside and outside of your workplaces. And I am, of course, referring to a former colleague, a former prison officer who worked at a private prison in Liverpool called HMP Old Course, Lenny Scott. May he rest in peace. And for those who don't know what happened to Lenny, Lenny was a prison officer. He did his job like we do ours. He was diligent. He was conscientious. He was professional. He never succumbed to the intimidation and the threats. He never succumbed to the offers of a bribe. He did his job the way we do ours. He'd resigned as a prison officer over 4 years ago, and he was followed to his gym by an ex-convict. And when he left, he was shot 6 times and murdered in cold blood. Why? Because he used to be a prison officer, because he used to be one of us. That's the threat we all face outside of the workplace. And that's why we've asked for, and will continue to ask for, a supplementary risk allowance, similar to what our brave colleagues in Northern Ireland have received for years because of the historic troubles and the imminent threat that they face to this day. And maybe that risk allowance will enable you to install additional security measures in the home. And to justify not awarding us that risk allowance, the so-called independent pay review body refused our request, and they stated this, and I'll read it out. We recognise that operational staff sometimes face real risk outside their establishments as well as inside. However, we do not consider that there was evidence of a general level of threat against operational staff that would justify an allowance of this sort in England and Wales. The situation is very different from that in Northern Ireland. So that the situation can be better understood, we consider that it would be appropriate for HMPPS to monitor incidents against its staff which appear to be related to their profession, but that occur when they are not on duty. What an absolutely disgraceful statement to make. They're basically saying that because we haven't had as many people murdered as they have in Northern Ireland, we are not worthy. They've desecrated the memory of the brave souls we've lost in Northern Ireland with that statement. We've got staff having cars firebombed in the staff car park at work. Staff having incendiary devices left outside their homes. Or maybe you're working on a landing and a convict comes up to you, hands you a piece of paper with your address on. Or maybe they whisper in your ear, I know where your kids go to school. Or maybe you're out in a social setting on your weekend off with your friends and family, and an ex-convict recognises you as a prison officer and launches a pint glass at you, trying to destroy you. That's the reality of what we face inside and outside of the workplace. And the pay review body come out with an abhorrent statement like that. Well, let me tell you this, conference. When I next meet this pay review body, I won't hold back. They're getting it both barrels. And I'll tell them exactly what I think of that statement and where they can shove it. Conference, we have to continue working together. We have to continue fighting together. And we have to continue winning together. And we haven't done too bad. We haven't done too bad at all. We managed to secure exemptions for our overseas recruits. And that's being extended further to the end of 2027, which means that those recruits we so desperately need to keep hopefully can get their visas extended or get sponsorship. We cannot afford to lose over 2,500 staff from the front line. We even managed to save jobs in the private sector when Mighty lost the contract. They were going to make several of our members redundant until we found them jobs in another part of that business. We found them jobs, not the employer, the POA. We found them jobs elsewhere in that business and kept them in employment. We're fighting for pensions justice for so many of our members. It's an absolute disgrace what's happening to them because of crapiter who cannot cope. We've got widows who are grieving, who cannot access a lump sum money that they need to survive. We've got members of staff who retired 10, 11, 12 months ago who still haven't received their gratuity or their pension payment. We've got staff going through the medical inefficiency process or who've already been dismissed on inefficiency who cannot access their lump sum. And we're aware of some governors who now, because they've been ordered to reinstate full pay, if someone's going down that inefficiency road, we've got some governors now who all of a sudden have decided, because they have to reinstate full pay, that they can all of a sudden sustain that long-term absence. How disgraceful is that? We've got some governors who, despite being told to pause the inefficiency process and not dismiss anyone until they get an official quote for compensation, we've got some governors who are still dismissing people during the farm process. These people need to be called out, but more importantly, tell you what, they need to be kicked out of this service. They're an absolute disgrace, and attitudes like that are not welcome and should not be tolerated. They are an absolute disgrace. We influenced the Rademacher Review, and we shall ensure that those recommendations are implemented in full, but more importantly, that they benefit POA members. We were influential on the Separation Centre review. We secured protective equipment, and we will continue to support our members in those most volatile of areas, separation centres and close supervision centres. Our most recent success was only last week when it was announced that at last, staff who work in the private sector and for PECs will be entitled to a long service medal. If you've got combined service within the private sector and the public sector, that will be taken into account. So if you've worked for 20 years, you will be entitled to a long service medal, quite right. Because in one way or another, we all work for the Crown. We all deal with the same level of threat. And that's because we were fighting together and we won together. But there is one fight that we need to unite over, and we need to fight together and win together on. And that is a change to your terms and conditions. HMPPS informed us that in September they intend to force you and mandate you, prison officers, that will be bands 3, 4s and 5s. They will mandate you to carry and administer the prescription drug naloxone, because they say that is part of your terms and conditions. Well, I'm telling you, it's damn well not. And we will fight this all the way. You see, when it comes to your contract of employment, HMPPS want your contract of employment to look like that. And on that contract of employment, they want your name, your job title, and underneath, they want it to say, you will do what we tell you without question. Well, they're not on. And let's be honest. If we had our industrial rights back This would be a trade dispute, and I would be asking you now to take industrial action to protect your terms and conditions. We've had ACAS talks over this over a prolonged period. The only people who put solutions on the table with the POA, this employer, offered nothing because they think they can bully you into submission and get you to do something that's not part of your terms and conditions. And let's speak honestly about this. You are asked to do more. You're being asked to do more all the time. More responsibility, more risk, more expectations. And whenever you raise your concerns, what does the employer say to you? It's part of your terms and conditions. As if a line on a piece of paper can justify absolutely anything. Well, every contract has its limits. Every contract has its boundaries. Every role has not just responsibilities, but you have rights as workers. And it's in moments like this conference that unity matters more than ever. Unity in how we support each other. Unity in how we ensure that every worker knows their rights, their protections, but more importantly, their worth. No one should ever feel pressured to go beyond what is safe, what is reasonable, and what is contractually expected. Conference, you are working for an employer who refuses you ad hoc days leave. We've got no staff, you can't have it off. They refuse you work-life balance shift patterns. They refuse to give you sick leave excuses. We even got governors now refusing to reinstate full pay or sacking people when they've told you can't do that at this moment in time. That's the type of employer you're working for. And you say to us, what are we going to do about it? You have all the power. There is only one way you are going to improve your working life, improve your terms and conditions, and improve your pay. If you want to get paid for the tax you currently do as volunteers, stop volunteering. If you want a decent overtime rate or a decent rate of payment plus, stop working overtime, stop working payment plus. It's the only way you're going to improve your life. You need to start the fight back. Start it now. The goodwill has to go. It has to go now, conference. It's as simple as that. Look where your goodwill's got you. Just look where it's got you. Look what you're up against. We keep hearing about this word, rehabilitation. It's an empty word. It means absolutely nothing. If the government were keen on rehabilitation, answer me this. Why have they slashed the education budgets by 25% across the board? 50% at Manchester, and yet the fantasist Charlie Taylor, the Chief Inspector of Prisons, criticises them because there's not enough activity spaces and there's too many convicts banged up. What do you expect when the budgets get slashed? This government came into power with a promise to the electorate. You will see the biggest insourcing in a generation, except when it comes to prisons. They continue to outsource the maintenance of prisons to the private sector. It's been a complete and utter disaster. A £2 billion black hole. £2 billion worth of outstanding repairs that will never get completed because it's being outsourced. They've outsourced their healthcare provision in prisons. That's been an absolute disaster as well. The healthcare providers can't meet their contractual obligations. They can't recruit nurses because nobody wants to work in a prison. The meds are always late, which means you're late off duty. And you try getting hold of a nurse after 9 o'clock at night to process late receptions, you've got absolutely no chance. Out of the 4 new build prisons that Labour have promised, 3 of them are going to be farmed out to the private sector. Tell me how that's insourcing. And don't even get me started on the pensions administrator, Crapper. That's been an absolute nightmare. And what have they done now? They've only handed them the payroll contract. So you can guarantee in 12 months' time, I'll be here walking around the hall with a begging bowl because Crapper would have lost me details, not realising that I've worked for them for 35 years and I haven't been paid. You can see it coming. They need to bring this back in-house, all of it. Conference, with all this going on, where did the so-called prison experts tell us we should look to for success? The academics, the theorists, the reform groups, the people who've never worked in a prison. What did he say to look to for success? Let's model the Scandinavian prison model. I'm fed up getting Scandinavia rammed down my throat. But I know the truth about Scandinavian prisons because I was lucky enough to attend the Prison Officers Union's conference in Denmark last year. And part of that trip was a tour of a Danish prison. And it was a lovely prison. It was an open prison, a bit like New Bold Revel, nice stately building set in acres of beautiful land. And built on that land was actually a closed prison, self-contained, fenced in, a 30-bed unit, all single cells, education block within it, nice exercise areas, similar to what we have in the closed estate. And whether you go on the open side or the closed side, you go through exactly the same reception procedures as we do. So prisoners come in, get strip searched, body scanner, get the belongings searched, you can have that, you can't have that. And then you walk through reception block, and built onto the reception block is the reception wing. 30 single cells, staffed by 3 officers at all times, day and night. And every single prisoner in Denmark gets offered an activity space, work or education. If you're on the open side, you can work in the grounds, you can work on the farm that they have, you can go out into the community and work, you can go to university or college. If you're on the closed side, they've got an education block on the closed side. They employ their own teachers, so it never gets cancelled, so you can carry on with your studies. They've got a few workshops in the closed prison. You can work as a cleaner. Everybody gets an activity space. And in Denmark, when you work, you get paid. And you have to buy your own food and cook your own food. So I said to the unit manager on the reception block, I said, well, that's great, fantastic. But what happens if you make this offer to the prisoners and they refuse to say, I'm not going to do none of that? And he said, we locked them up. I said, what do you mean you locked them up? He said, we locked them up. I said, well, you must let them out for exercise. He said, no. He said, we locked them up. He said, in Denmark, you come to prison to work and to reform, or we lock you up. Now, that's a truth that the fluffy brigade in this country couldn't handle. It's a bit like A Few Good Men, isn't it? You can't handle the truth. Well, they can't, because they don't want consequences. I met a delegate from Iceland. There's one prison in Iceland. It bangs up about 80 prisoners. They've got 69 prison officers to supervise them. He told me they've had parva and stab-proof vests for a decade, and they've just introduced tasers because there's been a slight increase in violence. So when you say to me, let's model Scandinavia, I say, I'm all for it. Because the basic wage for a prison officer in Denmark is 52 grand a year. It takes them 2 years to train prison officers, to soon go into 3 years to model Norway. And yes, they fail their recruits who don't meet their standards. They fail them. They only want the best. They get the protective equipment they need. They're working in modern jails. And every prisoner in their care has a guaranteed activity space. So when you say to me, let's model the Scandinavian prisons, I say, get your checkbook out. I'm all for it. Conference. We have to continue fighting together and winning together. We're fighting together and winning together, and we secured you the highest pay rises in over 30 years. Fighting together and winning together to secure body armour and the rollout of tasers. Fighting together and winning together to keep Parva in the youth custody estate. Fighting together and winning together to implement the Rademacher review to benefit POA members. Fighting together and winning together to secure a seat on the NHS Staff Side Council. Fighting together and winning together to secure exemptions for our overseas recruits. And we have to continue fighting together because we want to reduce your retirement age, and we will fight together and win together to protect your terms and conditions. But there is one fight we must unite over, fight together and win together, to take on this government, to restore our most basic of human rights, our workplace rights and our industrial rights. Let's fight together and win together to restore our right to strike. Conference, I salute you. Solidarity to you all.